stunned to hear this David Axelrod, Obama's top strategist, try to somehow say because Hillary supported the war in Iraq, Bhutto was killed?
As was I, John. Look, I was pretty much stunned by Huckabee, Clinton. I mean, you name it. The fact of the matter is this is a very complex and sad situation, which has been brought about by a number of missteps, miscalculations on the part of the Bush administration, on the part of many people all around the world. Ron Paul makes a good point that we decided.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Ron Paul hasn't made a...
No, he made one good point, which is that Bush miscalculated. But that's a whole other story. But
yeah, get out of here with Ron Paul.
Bush miscalculated that he backed an authoritative dictatorship instead of a secular, liberal, democratic candidate, and he backed up a guy who has a tenuous, at best, relationship with his own army that controls
Flavia,
and
wait a minute. Axelrod tried to say because Clinton voted for the war, she bears some responsibility.
Ridiculous.
That is like one of the dumbest things I've heard said in this political season. Either they're desperate or the guy didn't have enough sleep. Which is it?
I don't know. What I do think it is insensitive. This woman has 3 children still living and a husband. She had her father and 2 brothers killed. The world is mourning. This is not the time to be taking cheap political shots at Clinton, at Bush, at anyone. What it is a time to do is have a serious and honest discussion, which is that Al-Qaeda has not taken their eye off the ball.
Right,
and they're looking at a 200 million person Sunni state with $500 billion of an economy and nukes and Western military equipment and better, all of us together, Republicans, Democrats, Americans, figure out what we can do with our policy to make sure that a travesty like this doesn't happen. And yes, there is a point to be made that Iraq is a distraction from these other things, but his point was very simplistic.
Flavia, I mean, you have just qualified for Secretary of State if the Democrats win the election. Let's go to you, Amanda. In all seriousness, what is Ron Paul talking about? Look, I know he has his support. He's raised $18 million in this country.
You want me to explain Ron Paul?
I know there are people who are libertarians and want government off their back. But, I mean, for this guy to say that we should not be involved in foreign policy, which was exactly what he said. He said, well, you know, things are complicated over there. I mean, we have to pick a side. The life is complicated, Ron. Hello? I mean, what is this? This is unbelievable to me. This guy's got any of this support.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, Ron Paul isn't the most consistent presidential candidate. I mean, he voted for the Afghan war, but yet he has this completely isolationist perspective and thinks that we shouldn't have any foreign entanglements. I mean, it's kind of like his record on earmarks and fiscal responsibility.
He says, you know what he said? This is the thing that got me. He says, I've never voted for an earmark. I put him in the bill, but I never voted for him. I wanted somebody else to pass.
He must be
Get
doing
out of here
something
with
right.
that guy.
He must be doing something right because you 2 important people are gunning for him.
You know what? It's unbelievable to me that he's got this traction, and I know I'm going to get a lot of nasty emails and blogs saying I don't get libertarians. I do. I think the guy he's out of another orbit as far as I'm concerned. All right, let's talk about the polls here. Yeah, maybe they were in the same saucer together. All right, let's talk about the polls. They say, the Los Angeles Times says the Democrats are all tied in Iowa. The poll's a little skeptical, Flavia, because it came over the Christmas season. But look, caucus scores, who is going to show on a cold, icy, snowy night in Iowa? Barack Obama's young people or Hillary Clinton's dedicated crowd, or maybe even John Edwards' people. He's been living there.
Absolutely. And I will say the same thing I said a year ago, and I've said every time I've ever talked about it since. Anyone who tells you they know who's going to win in Iowa, and therefore which will have an impact, especially on New Hampshire, I think is out to lunch. I think that it's really anyone's game, and when I say anyone, I mean Clinton, Obama, and John Edwards. And I will not be even mildly surprised if John Edwards comes out with a win, which ironically could help Clinton, because then all of those independents who are thinking about voting on the Democratic side of New Hampshire for Obama might get scared. The fact of the matter is Clinton's new thing with not talking to people and her very sort of controlled, disciplined way of running a campaign, I don't know. I lived in Iowa. She's not my kind of candidate. I'm just being honest
Yeah,
about
but Flavia, look, let me tell you, you got real pros out there, and they got to get them to those homes, and they got to get them to stand tall, and that you cannot underestimate that Clinton organization.
Oh,
and the sharpness
I wouldn't. Not only would I not underestimate her
And
organization, I wouldn't underestimate anything about her. She's running a very strong
campaign. I agree.
campaign.
If Edwards loses in Iowa, he's gone. He's toast. If Obama wins, becomes more interesting.
Well, but Edwards can still do South Carolina and Nevada. You got to think about his union support and some of the southern stuff.
I think he's toast. I think he's toast. Amanda, let's talk a little bit about the repubs. Now, you got Mike Huckabee is really hanging in there in Iowa. Does that surprise you?
Well, no, I mean, if there's anything to know about the Iowa voters is that they're used to being told things in exchange for, their political favor. They like this populist message. I mean, look at the candidates they support. They're still hanging on to John Edwards and Huckabee. What do they both have in common? Class warfare, populist messages. I mean, they're used to being catered to. So I'm not really surprised by that, but I do think Clinton will pull it out in the end, because if you look at the caucus scores she's been seeking out, very calculated in a way, women over the age of 55 and 2004 were half of those who caucus. So, I mean, her whole thing about making history isn't about making history. It's explicitly about getting votes, and I think that'll be what swings it for her on caucus day.
Well, ladies, with the terrible tragedy of Mrs. Budo losing her life, a lady who went there and was dedicated to her country. I know she had problems when she was in, but her dedication, a woman rising, and they shoot her down. But it then brings back the whole issue of foreign affairs and foreign affairs experience. The race could be shuffled so many ways before we get through this. It's going to be interesting to see how it develops, and I believe the Budo effect will give some real benefit to those